Hi everyone, welcome to our podcast for Black Women Connect Vancouver. Girl, you know it. So I'm the founder of Black Women Connect Vancouver, which started in 2017. And Black Women Connect Vancouver is a collective of women who come to inspire, empower, and leverage our strengths and embrace our diverse experiences. It is a community where we can build meaningful relationships and celebrate the beauty of our Black womanhood. I hope that you enjoy it. Welcome everyone to Girl You Know It, episode 4. Today we're going to be talking about family dynamics. And today we don't have our other host, Elle, with us, but it's just going to be the two of us. So we're going to get to know a little bit about our family dynamics and just a little bit of our perspective on different things about families. So let's get started.
Yeah, awesome. So I think where I'd like to start with this kind of idea around family is the types of relationships that you have with your parents and like you as an individual. And then I'd also like to delve a little bit deeper into you and like the difference between your siblings and their relationship with your family, because that's a very big part of like my family dynamic, and that's the where we are different the most. So what kind of relationship do you have with your parents?
Right. I have a great relationship with my parents. I think when you get older, and like I'm in my 30s now, and so it just becomes more of like a friendship level. Like they are my friends, and so it's very I think we have a great time. Yeah, I don't see them as often as I should. Sorry, mom and dad. But yeah, I try to see them as much as possible and talk with them. But yeah, I have a pretty good relationship with them. Yeah.
So you said when you get older it shifts. What was that shift, and like did you? What were the key indicators that the relationship had changed from being a parent-child one to a friend one?
Yes. I think, your teenage years are just like a mess. Well, for me anyways, I was definitely like a moody teenager, and I just didn't care to like hang out with them. And now I just didn't really care. And then in my 20s, like it's like your discovery phase of like you're failing, you're doing well. You're like, what am I doing with my life? Where should I go? And then like when you're in that stage and someone else telling you like, where are you going with your life? What are you doing? Like, what's your plan? Like that just like brings so much anxiety in your life that you start to kind of build up barriers with your family, because you're like, I don't even know what you're like I am doing, and then you're asking me more questions, and then you start to retreat. So I think that kind of affected our relationship. But what about you?
I have a good relationship with my parents. I think I have a better relationship with my mom than I do with my dad. Also, living this far away, my dad's not technological at all. Like, you can buy my dad a phone today, he will not charge it ever. And so when it's dead, it's dead. He's like, oh, no more phone lines. Cool, whatever. So it's a little bit harder to keep communication with him. But it's really weird. My relationship with my parents changed. So when I was younger, I was best friends with my dad. And we used to do, like, cute picnics on the grass in the backyard. Like, the cutest things ever. And then our relationship shifted because of the dynamic of my father and as an individual. And then I got closer to my mother, but I also noticed that the closeness with my mom started in a supportive role. Like I was this pillar of strength, this pillar of logic, and it really informed my role in the family within my siblings as well, where I was almost the voice of reason. And I was the person that they went to for like direct instruction or like anything that would be scientific, quote unquote, or anything that's like a counselor, kind of like that supportive listener role, which is great, but it's also very taxing because then you're bearing everybody's emotional well-being. And, I felt very guilty for leaving my family, because after holding that position for so long, I wasn't too sure that they'd be able to get on without me, and I had to divorce myself from the idea of being their pillar or their savior or that strength, and to actually give them the opportunity to grow and develop on their own. So I have a good relationship with my parents, but it's funny, I think 5 months ago, I had a frank conversation with my mom, because she was like, oh, your sisters are doing this, your brother is doing this, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, cool, we've had ups and downs with our larger family, where family has stepped away, families come back in, and kind of this walk out, walk in mentality, which I don't like. But my mom believes firmly, like, blood is blood, so you'll do anything for blood, where the young ones are like, nah, it's cool. Right. You can get blocked. Like, blocking's not above anybody. You can get blocked today. And so having to kind of let her know and almost give her this freedom to be like, you've raised your kids and now you can choose if you like your kids or not, right? Now you have the opportunity to choose because you can love them, but you don't have to like them. And I think if you're honest with yourself to say if you like your kids or not as individuals, then you can mold a relationship out of that and you can really figure it out. And then they have also the responsibility to mold their relationship, right? If you're relying on the parent-child kind of doctrine, then the child is always waiting, right? The child can never teach the parent anything. And so it's really shifted our dynamic, and I think my mom understands that I can teach her stuff now, in as much as we're still learning from her as well and each other. So that's really interesting. But I don't know, I'm really fascinated with the types of relationships parents have with their different children. Would you say that you and your siblings have the same type of relationship with your parents?
I think growing up, we all had different relationships with my parents, but I don't think it was drastic. I think my parents did actually a really good job of making sure that we got treated like equally in our relationships. So either we just may relate to them differently, but I don't think we ever got treated differently. I mean, we may all have different perspectives. My sisters aren't here to say whatever they feel, but I do think that was, that's something I would say probably wasn't a drastic thing. I think for us, so I guess we should probably give a little bit background of our stories.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
We grew up very diverse in how we grew up. So I was born in Zambia. We left when I was 5 with my family, and then we lived there for about 5.5 years. And then we moved to Saskatchewan for about 9 years. And then, I've been in, I guess, BC for almost 15 years now. So even during that time of transitioning, being in different countries, and you kind of have a different family dynamic in that way because their culture is different. So you're adapting to your family structure changing again within the different cultures, and then you're trying to figure that out. Your parents are trying to figure out how the best way to raise their kids, and what is the best way. Like, you just came from a whole different continent, you're speaking a different language, the weather's different, the schooling's different, you have to learn another language. So things like that, I think, were always a weird kind of adjustment. I think that my parents just had to learn to figure out. But even in that time, I think that all of us kind of transitioned differently in every move. I think, my older sister is 9 years older than me. And so I know that for her, her experience versus mine would be completely different because I was so much younger. So to me, I probably was just running around, playing around with friends, being like, this is great. Where she left her friends at a certain age, and then moving again at a certain age is I think is harder. Whereas I think our transition moving to different countries was kind of easier because it was always new and exciting, if that makes sense. So I would say that was interesting. And then she left when she was 21 and she moved to the States or America. And so she left early. And so I think because there's 3 of us, and so she's the eldest and I'm the middle and then there's the youngest, then and that way when family dynamics and sibling roles, then I end up being the oldest and then I have a younger sibling. Even though she's a year and 2 months younger than me, it's still that that expectation of being the oldest, you have to be the better example, still there. And in most African cultures, that's just normal. But so I would say in that way, we had to always learn to change in our family dynamics. And that was something that we had to just kind of learn to adjust in. And so that was a little bit hard because obviously when she left when she was 21, but I was still so young. And then it's you're seeing your older sister leave and you don't see her for a very long time. It was hard, I think, in that way because it changes your family drastically when one sibling is gone. And so I'm sure you understand that when you had to be the one to also leave and be far away from your family. So what was that like?
Yeah, absolutely. You and I have a similar experience with this sister because my eldest sister also left much earlier. And so I grew up in South Africa and I am one of 4 children. And so we have a house of 6. There's 3 girls and 1 boy, and my brother is the youngest. He is 8 years younger than me. Wow, he's 8 years younger than me. That's wild. Took my last born status. I'll never forgive him for that little boy. Anyway, and my oldest sister had I don't know if it's the opportunity or just the way that life circumstances went, but she was able to leave the house and go kind of live her own life, and she had that opportunity, and we had a lapse in kind of seeing her, but it was also because on the terms at which she left were not favorable to my parents.
Right.
So they obviously didn't want to perpetuate us going to see her because as people always think, if you go see somebody who's doing something, they're going to rub off on you and you're immediately going to be like, oh, I'm moving out too, when you're like 4 years younger than the person that's moved out. So that was interesting. So as my other sister was gone, me and my middle sister had a really close relationship. My mom dressed us as twins until my sister was like 13 or something. And she was like, I'm done with this. But we had a really close relationship. We fight a lot, but we also bond over a lot of different things. My little brother, I love my little brother to bits. He's so fun, and he really is that last change in the chain of the family dynamic. Like my dad's got a very big personality, and he's very much like conservative, but also is very like liberal and free. My mom is very conservative. She's like, I'm gonna go to church. Like my mom knows who she is in that regard, and she's very family oriented. My oldest sister has a very Virgo attitude about her. Like she's like, it's her way or the highway, basically. And then my other sister is Sagittarius, so she's very like social justice-y. She's currently a lawyer and all of that stuff. And then I brought in like the science background with my neuroscience, and my brother's doing like financing and accounting and coding right now. So we're all very different, and I think it really helps to have people with different perspectives like that for the family dynamic. But I kind of feel like my brother didn't have to go through the stringent rules that we had to go through, because we kind of opened up that free road for him. But now my mom's always like, oh, your brother's doing this and doing that. I'm like, yeah, but you're not doing anything about it. You're just telling me. It doesn't help me. So it's really hard to be far away. And I think, like I said earlier, I thought my family would like crumble, but they didn't. They actually got a lot stronger, and everybody stepped up in their own way. It's just really weird now because I want to be there for their things that happen. Yes. I want to be there when they celebrate their new things. When they, like my brother just got his driver's license, right? To be there and to be like, hey, let's drive around and do that kind of stuff is really weird. And I'm still coming to terms with being this far away from everybody. But I think it's given me an opportunity to see my family objectively and to be able to also choose how I want to participate in the family dynamic. And so I think being independent and free of one's family is something that everybody should try. Even if it's like going on a trip for a few months, right? And then you're going to come back and live with your family for the rest of your life. But just being able to take yourself out of that situation, you see how you're complicit in the bad things, and then also how you perpetuate the good things as well. So that was really interesting. But I noticed this year for us, setting boundaries with our extended family has been a really big thing. And even right now is continuing to happen. So exploring that is weird and is new because of how my mom raised us to like family is family no matter what. Like even if they burn your house, like you will still invite them to dinner and like to Christmas and all of that stuff. So just kind of dealing with that, and then bringing it here where I'm like, everybody is family. And then everyone in Vancouver is like,
you are not my family.
No new friends.
Yes.
I'm done.
100%.
Sorry. My quota is filled. And
I mean, not gonna lie, I'm that person. But you've become my family, so it's okay.
By force or by fire, I definitely made it happen.
Crawled into my life. So,
I crawled into your life.
Yeah.
Madness. But yeah, that's the biggest thing. So I guess now that everybody's kind of paving their own way, how do you see your dynamic? Oh, actually, no, let me ask you this first. So you have all sisters, right? What was it like to be in a 4-girl, 1-man dynamic thing in your household?
I mean, I don't know about my dad's perspective, but I think for us, it was good. Like, we fought a lot, of course. I think tensions are always high when there's a lot of estrogen in the house. But I think my dad kept a good balance of that. I think having him there, he's just, like, very level-headed and calm. And so that was kind of good for us, I think, in those times. But because it's, like, that 9-year age gap in the first, and then my younger sister and I are so close, so, like, I feel like the fighting was more, like, different with my older sister and I versus like my younger sister and I, because we literally would bicker and then we just get over it kind of thing, whereas like my older sister was kind of like she helped raise us and so it was a little bit different in that way. It was more like a respect fight versus like you're so annoying. Why are you in my room? Or why did you take my clothes? Even though I was the one who was taking clothes because I know she's going to comment. But I like those kind of things. And so I think that was kind of our dynamics. But I think we got really close later 20s. And then now we're just like, we're best friends. So I think sometimes also there's one thing I was talking to you about my friends is like, I can always notice women that I meet who have sisters versus when they have brothers because they actually interact with women differently. And I notice right away. And because you can just always tell, because if like you and I get into like whatever, we kind of like get over it. You're like, you're annoying, you know what I mean? Versus like some other people will take it to heart and be like, is there something that I did? Or like our friendship is over, or like they don't really know how to handle the conflict, because I feel like when you grow up with sisters, you just kind of like are irritated with each other, but you don't see it as like this is the end, or like you don't know how to handle this conflict because you're just like, oh, been here before, moving on. You know what I mean? Like this will just fly away. And so that is something that I've noticed with friends that have brothers versus when they have sisters. So that's also an interesting family dynamic that I'm starting to be like, oh wow, like I do. And I also realize I get along, or I get closer in a certain way with friends who have sisters versus when they have brothers. It's just like a different kind of dynamic. I can't explain it.
Do you think it's because the banter? Like you get to almost like be horrible to each other, but with love?
Yeah, there's that. And like there's kind of like the sisterhood aspect, but then there's also like the conflict. I think it's really honestly the conflict. It's like they don't realize like if I'm annoyed with you today, it's not because I don't like you as a person or I'm trying to be rude. It's like it's just annoyance and then it goes away. I don't know how to explain it.
Do you think that's like a sister versus having a brother thing, or that's just a like how do I say this? Like just being equipped with conflict resolution.
Yeah,
because I feel like
I
think I know a lot of people who have like siblings and sisters or brothers, but they still don't know how to work through conflict resolution.
Right.
And they don't. Yeah, I don't know. It's just really weird, but
I mean, it's true. I think it's also how did you deal with conflict in your family, right? So that's also a little bit different. If you weren't close and you were always just fighting whether you had sisters or brothers, then obviously that's gonna be different. I think I'm more like in the perspective of like a, I guess, healthy family dynamic, like what that would look like if you dealt with conflict well. I think that I do notice the difference a little bit in that. Yeah. But I mean, it depends. But
it really does.
It's just really just my experience, so it's not like a written in stone. This is how everyone acts.
What do you mean by this?
Healthy?
Healthy.
Because I think that all families are dysfunctional. So I'm not saying that by doing quotations that it's like unhealthy, but it's like I think we've gotten to the. Yes, it's okay to have conflict in families. I think that people sometimes dream, like, if they grew up in a household that was toxic, and then they see other families like, wow, it's so healthy, or like they have two-parent household or whatever. It's like they think that this is like this dream household, but I'm like, they still have dysfunction within their family.
Yeah, so as you were referring to, healthy families and the dysfunction in families as well, I find it very interesting, this shift of like, a family dynamic when you're raised in a collectivist environment versus raised in like this independent, individualistic environment that I'm seeing here. And I say seeing because I'm not participating in any like Western really like family dynamics, because I don't have my own kids here or anything like that. But it's really interesting to how your extended family, but also like your neighbors play a very big part in what your family dynamic looks like. And what I mean by that is that back home, like in the neighborhood that we lived in, especially the street that we lived on, if your mom wasn't going to be home, you could go to anybody's house and hang out there, and they would feed you. They'd make sure you did your homework. Yeah. They'd make sure, that you're really well taken care of. Sometimes you fall asleep there, and then your parents come and pick you up, and you wake up in your own bed. So just that ability to extend the relationships, right? To be able to learn about different people as well. But it also gave me more parents than I wanted, to be quite honest. Because like sometimes I just want to be free and I want to do what I want to do, but all of these people are watching me. So that was a really weird dynamic. How does your extended family play into your immediate family dynamic?
So for us, because we moved as an immediate family, and we didn't actually grow up with our extended family. So it was only when I started going back to Zambia, I started to get to know my extended family. It was never that was an interesting, I think, family dynamic for us because we moved here and everyone would do like first of all, Thanksgiving is just not a thing in Zambia, and so
not in Africa anywhere.
So I know that sometimes they try to bring different things, but yeah, so it was interesting because I'd watch all like my friends and be like, oh, I'm going to my grandma's house or my grandparents' house or like my auntie and uncle or like, you know, my cousins and stuff, and we were just like, we only had each other, and I think that's what made us be a tight knit like family versus like how you left. So it's kind of like that dynamic shifted.
Yeah.
Whereas like we only had each other. So whether we fight or not, it's not like I can go to my cousin and be like, oh, my sister did this, blah, blah, blah. Or you know what I mean? And have a sister and my cousin. It just wasn't available for us. So I think that's why we are so close because we only had each other. So it's like we are each other's protection. And I think my parents did do a good job of that, of being like, you only have each other. So you better like find a way to get along when we did fight. And so I think that's what made us kind of be like very protective of each other right now because that's all we had. So
but then what happens when you go to Zambia though, like with your extended family? Because I've got news, but I want your news first.
So when I started going back to Zambia, I think that's when I started, like the first trip is always like, who are you? And like, you're kind of like all shy and awkward. But now it's like, they're my family. I mean, I think because I have such a big extended family on both sides, it's hard to maintain all of them to be like close to you. So it's just kind of like you are closer to some and closer to others. It's not like I don't like them. It's more like, oh, I'm just closer to this person. Maybe you just have more in common or just different things. I'm also a little bit like in a certain part of my family, like a little bit one of the older ones too. So then that's also a different perspective because it's like, then you're seen as like the older one who's like, you know, more accomplished in life and stuff like that. So that also has a different relationship. So like cousins with that, I have a different relationship. And then cousins that are older than me, I have a different relationship because it's more of a respect level too, even though we are cousins. So I think it's like, it's still growing and it's still developing because it's not like I'm going every year to Zambia or anything like that. But I mean, with social media now, it's easier to get to know certain cousins. And sometimes like my relationship with cousins shifts too. Like I may be closer to this one a little bit for like this many years and then like closer to this, but it's not like because I don't like you. It's just our relationship are different. Maybe we're more in the same place in life. Maybe we're going through the same thing. So I kind of have like a different perspective on that. I think it's still a struggle because even here, like people have the like Christmases and like family stuff like that. It's like my sisters live out east here and like sometimes it's just like my parents and I or like, you know, like, and then I see other people with like their big family gatherings and stuff. It's like, it's not something I grew up with, so I'm not like sad about it, but it's just different. So it's like we've just created a whole different family structure. I mean, I don't know if I have kids, like I'll do that. I'll want to like I want my sister's kids and I to be all together, but I don't know if it's like a, you know, like you want, like, you know what I mean? Like, should we all live together? Should we have a compound? Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, it's interesting. I said if.
Here's Nataizia's children never going to Zambia. They're like, Mommy, where do you come from? Nowhere, my child. I definitely come from here. I think it's really important for me to understand that the dynamics of a family relationship has always been around monogamy.
Yes.
And I think I don't know if my dad's parents were strictly monogamous. Okay. They passed away when I was really little. And then on my mom's side as well, they were monogamous in a sense of like dating, but not in like a present, what are they called? Nuclear family, right? Yes. In that sense. And so it's always been interesting for me to figure out how that applies to me and how I want to raise my kids and create my own family dynamic. And honestly, I don't know. I don't know if I want to, because I still do have this, like, it takes a village to raise a kid. But I'm also that type of person who likes to host people and likes to have like this big fullness. I come from, I think on my dad's side, we have like 200 plus family members. Yeah, same. And then on my mom's side, probably about the same. Yeah. And so when you're going out and having to reintroduce yourself to different people, and then, you know, there's also the dynamic of black tax, which is something that my sister and I noticed when we went to university with a whole bunch of white people who, like, you know, would make their money or like go to school and have tuition, and they had this plan to get a job, and it was like, I'm gonna get a job and buy an apartment. And it's like, I can get to where you're getting right after university in 6 years because of black tax, because of the tax of having a big black family, and also having gone through apartheid back home and what that's done for our social systems as well. So it's really interesting, that dynamic. And I don't know if it happens for international students here, but I know living here, it still happens for me. Like, I have a very big black tax because whenever there's something happening at home, I will send money back. Or I'm always looking to help in a financial way. And I think a lot of the times that's where families break, and a lot of the time that's where the strain is around that supporting, and when somebody isn't necessarily doing their bit or giving enough of that support system on their end as well. I'd be interested to see what somebody who has not been in this nuclear family kind of dynamic looks like, somebody who, you know, might be estranged from their family or whatever the case may be, right? I think it would be worth it to have a conversation with, you know, folks that live in different types of families, but also families that aren't like in this monogamous sense, right? Like, I would love to know what living on a compound is like, and you know, get those different perspectives, because I think they teach us different principles about relationships, about relating to each other, and communication as well, and then also about your independence and how you cultivate independence coming out of that. Because I used to strive to get married and like to have the kids and to have the that and to have the this, but without necessarily having seen what would be regarded as a perfect nuclear family. I still wanted to be the one to demonstrate that perfect nuclear family, but now I couldn't care less.
Yeah.
Now I'm
there
just
is
like,
no
whatever.
perfect nuclear family. And I think the more people, as you grow and you evolve, you start to see there isn't, right? You're going to have communication issues. You're going to have conflict issues. You're going to have like things, something will come up. Each family has one thing. And I think that's when, once you start to realize that, you start to forgive your family too for certain things that you felt like, wow, we just didn't do this well as a family. And then that's when you start to be like, okay. And sometimes it's also like realizing like, I have to forgive a family member for not knowing better. I have to forgive myself for not knowing better, for treating that family member that certain way, right? It's like, it's that part of that growth and evolving that we just have to get to that point. I think so many times people like to hold on to things. Well, like, they did this to me and they did this to me. They didn't treat me well. They didn't like buy this for me when I was growing up, and I could have been successful if they only did this, or, you know, if I had a 2-parent household, or if I did this. And it's like, it's not true, because you don't know what your life could have been like. But all you can do is just, how can you move forward from the time you're in now? Now, I'm also not saying stay in toxic environments either. There's a difference. There's a difference between forgiving and what is actually toxic, as like, what is a good boundary to have with a family member, right? That's not treating you well. And I think that that's the difference, because sometimes people feel like, well, I'm just going to cut them off because I feel a certain type of way. But I'm like, okay, is there like, where's the grace given in that situation? Or is it actually a toxic environment? You should not be talking to that family member. I think we weren't taught that, on how to deal with that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Also, inviting in like different races and like interracial dating into your family dynamic. I was myself and then my cousin who passed away a very long time ago were the only two people that have brought non-black people into the family in terms of like the dating spectrum, which is really interesting. A lot of people will change and like will want to put their best foot forward, which is it's kind of bittersweet when I see that and I notice it. I'm just like, you know, this is awesome that you're able to cultivate this different persona for this person. But if you can be that, why are you not that with me? Like, do I not deserve for you to have that gratitude or level of respect, or, you know, just putting your best foot forward, even if we're comfortable with each other? And I think that's where the complacency in family dynamics is. It's like, I don't know, for me, I find that when I changed when I was in school because I was in a different environment, I always questioned myself, like, why am I different in this environment, and what are the things that are changing that I can take from here and bring in with me on a day-to-day basis, right? And I think there's this really interesting thing that happens with traditional families and traditional ways of getting raised, and then non-traditional ways that you learn when you do explore and you are independent and you meet different people as well, and how we can apply those. Because I feel like if you can become a better version of yourself when I'm bringing somebody new into the family, why are you not that better version of yourself all the time, right? Do we not deserve that? And can I require that and can I request that, and what happens when I start to request for certain things to be put into place, or for people to treat me a certain way, or to show me that level of respect as well, especially when it comes to people that are older than you, right? Because I don't know about you, but culturally, I grew up having to greet everybody I met. Respect was a given. If somebody was older than me, you would address people not by their first names. You'd address them by, mama, or exactly, like a specific title, auntie, or whoever the case is. And it's just like, but then when you're starting to form relationships with people that are older than you, you realize that respect isn't something that you just give up. It is a two-way street, and it's something that has to be earned, because just because you're older than me, or just because you have this certain status, it doesn't mean that you're doing the things that would be respectable for myself, or even for you, right? Regardless of how much self-reflection you're doing. So for me, the next thing that I'd like to dive into is to figure out, how do we set those boundaries with our families, whether we're setting them now in our late 20s or setting them in their 40s. It's never too late to set boundaries. And how do we cultivate that new way of like relating to each other when we're learning how to treat each other?
No, I think that's a great point. I really like that. I mean, that's gonna work really well with our next episode that's coming up. So we can definitely talk about boundaries. So I think that we can dive more into that, what that looks like. But I really liked getting to know a little bit more about your family dynamics. I know we've talked about it a little bit, but like, it's been interesting kind of hearing that perspective, because like we grew up similarly but not, it's like you grew up more in South Africa, whereas like I didn't, but we still like carry our traditional values with us and the way our parents raised us, and how the same thing, like what is respect, what is like family, it's like family is family, like that's it, you know what I mean? And so it's like, it's those things that we've like, I think we've had like common ground in, and it's been great to get
some non-negotiables,
as
100%. They would say. Yes, this is great. Cheers.
Cheers.
COVID will air cheers.
Oh yes, air cheers.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. It's always amazing to get an opportunity to chat with these lovely ladies. So if you're looking to follow us off of the podcast and you're looking to catch up with some of the content that we have, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube, all at Black Women Connect Vancouver. And we also have a website for you at blackwomenconnectvancouver.com, which is where you can sign up for our mailing list and our newsletter, so you can keep updated with our growth and all of the other events that we have planned for you. Catch you later. Bye.